By the mid to late 90s, it had been over a decade since guitarist Carlos Santana and his band had a hit song. But his band would reemerge in 1999 with the song Smooth, and it wasn't just a hit song, but it was one of the most popular songs in music history. But the path to even get Smooth out became a major obstacle, as there was infighting between songwriters, record labels, and even Carlos Santana himself first hated the song when he heard it. It nearly resulted in the song not coming out. Today, let's talk about the uphill battle to release the song Smooth. While hard rock and so-called grunge bands dominated the earlier part of the 90s, by the later part of the decade it was all about bubblegum pop like Britney Spears and Backstreet Boys, while faceless rock bands like Matchbox 20, Third Eye Blind, and Collective Soul became hugely popular. By this point in time, guitarist Carlos Santana had not had a hit in quite some years, despite still being signed to a major label in Polygram. Prior to releasing what would be his comeback album in 1999 with Supernatural, the group's past 4 albums hadn't even went gold. In 1999, Santana was scheduled to play a show in New York City at Radio City Music Hall, and the guitarist at the time would reach out to his old friend Clive Davis, who was now working at Arista Records, to come to the show. The two had had a long history, as Davis originally signed Santana to his first major recording contract 3 decades prior, when Davis worked for Columbia Records. The guitarist would be reminded by his kids, who were now teenagers by the late 90s, that they rarely heard their father's music on the radio anymore, except for 2 songs, which was Black Magic Woman and Oi Como Va. The guitarist knew he was about to be dropped by Polygram and enlisted Davis to help him stage a career comeback. Davis would recall to Rolling Stone watching the guitarist on stage that night at Radio City Music Hall in 1997 saying, "It was only when I was at Radio City watching him play, seeing him still the dazzling virtuoso, seeing the younger members of the band with whom he was playing, that it triggered thoughts about the growth of the Hispanic population in America. And I saw a diverse audience there, ethnic makeup, racial makeup, age makeup. I started thinking, wow, I wonder if Carlos could come back." We agreed to meet in Beverly Hills. Santana would now find a new home in Arista Records, and it was at that meeting in Beverly Hills that both parties decided to bring 7 songs into a future studio session. Davis would tell Esquire, "Give me half the album and trust that I will find material that is integral to your artistry. The other half of the album will be whatever you want it to be." It would be guitarist B.B. King who would serve as the inspiration for Santana's comeback album. The guitarist had put out an album in 1997 titled Deuces Wild, which was mostly panned by critics, but it provided a brilliant blueprint for Santana's next record. It would feature a number of guest artists including Tracy Chapman, D'Angelo, and Bonnie Raitt, and the album ended up selling more than the average B.B. King album, and so Arista Records had something similar planned for Santana's comeback record. The label soon started scouring magazine interviews with both older rock stars and newer acts to see who mentioned Santana as being one of their influences. About a year and a half later, by early 1999, the album had seen quite a bit of progress, enlisting the likes of Dave Matthews, Eric Clapton, Lauryn Hill, and CeeLo Green, to name a few. But it soon became apparent that the folks at the label were still missing that one song that they needed to be a huge radio hit out of the gate. A man named Pete Ganberg, who was then an A&R executive at Arista Records who worked on the project, would tell Esquire, "I had this kind of dread in the back of my mind that even though we had a great album, we didn't have a first single that would open the doors for us." It would be another A&R exec at the same label and friend of Ganberg who introduced the team working on the new Santana album to an up-and-coming songwriter named Itzhak Schur. Schur, for his part, had previously written a few hit songs and had a new song he was working on at the time called Room 17. Schur pitched the song to the team at Arista and Santana as a potential huge hit, trying to capture the same vibe as some of his past hits. After playing the demo for the folks at Arista, they were a little lukewarm to it. Ganberg would tell Rolling Stone what he told Schur after hearing the demo for the first time, saying, "Look, good news, bad news. The good news is I really like the music. It's kind of a modern take on classic Santana, but I think your lyric is completely wrong. Room 17 was the room in the hotel where the groupie was going to meet the artist after the show. I said, if you know anything about Carlos Santana, he will never be associated with a song like this." However, Schur would dispute the story, claiming the lyrics he wrote for Room 17 were originally about a couple who reconnected intimately after a long time apart, despite both of them being in relationships. Schur would claim he had only a weekend to come up with the lyrics, and that was the best he could do at the time. He was insistent that the song was good as it was and didn't need any changes, but Ganberg asked for the demo to be resubmitted without the vocal track, and he wanted to get a top-tier songwriter to write the lyrics and the melody. Soon enough, the demo made its way to Rob Thomas from Matchbox 20, and Thomas himself was a big Santana fan and even played some of the same festivals with Santana but never got a chance to meet the guitarist. So at the very least, he'd be able to meet one of his musical idols. Thomas's wife Marisol, who is of Puerto Rican and Spanish descent, would serve as the inspiration for the song, and soon enough Room 17's title would be changed to Smooth. Thomas penned the track as a love letter to his wife, telling Rolling Stone, "I think the smooth part came first. I was thinking more about Carlos. I was thinking you're so smooth about Carlos, and then you hear my rhythm on your radio. But then I realized somewhere in the middle of that, I had this wealth of information because I had this smoking hot Latin girlfriend already. Even though she was from Queens and not Spanish Harlem, everything else was on point, and it ended up being about her." The lyrics Thomas came up with still needed some work, as Arista felt that the song still needed a better chorus, and the chorus that Thomas came up with soon became the pre-chorus. So Thomas and Schur would work with one another to finally come up with a chorus, and presented the new demo to both the label execs and Carlos Santana. While the label execs loved the song and knew they had a massive hit on their hands, the guitarist hated what he heard. He felt it was too similar to his past works and wanted to do something musically he had never done before. But after Clive Davis called him up and convinced him the song would be a hit, he essentially agreed to do it, trusting Davis's instinct. Now the song just needed a vocalist. While Thomas sang on the demo, there were some names thrown around about who should sing on the song, including Bon Jovi and George Michael, but given that Matchbox 20 was all over radio at the time, having Rob Thomas guest star on the song seemed like a much better play at having the song be commercially successful than someone else. But there was a problem. Matchbox 20 at the time was signed to Atlantic Records, and Santana was signed to Arista Records. Atlantic at the time didn't want Rob Thomas singing on another label's record, but after some convincing, Atlantic agreed to let Thomas appear on the track. Keep in mind, during this whole time, Carlos Santana and Rob Thomas hadn't met yet. With all the parties finally on the same page, the plan was to hit the studio with Matchbox 20 producer Matt Serletic to record the song in the spring of 1999. Here's what Rob Thomas had to say about meeting Carlos Santana for the first time and having the musician react to his lyrics.
It was in the studio playing it for Carlos. That was the first thing he had said. He's like, he listened to it, and before he even met her, he's like, you have a Spanish girl, don't you? And I was like, yeah, oh yeah. And he's like, because he said, but it was funny. It was not because I used the Spanish phrases. He thought because just the idea of the sentiment that, I would change my life to better suit your mood. He's like, you must be with a Spanish woman, because that's like the only time you would do that.
Then came another problem for the song. The new Santana album named Supernatural would come out on June 15th, 1999. Smooth was going to be the first single released from the record, but Arista still needed to get permission known as singles rights from Rob Thomas's label Atlantic Records. Initially, Atlantic didn't want to have the song released as a single, as one fear that was written about was that Thomas would somehow join Santana if the song was a hit. Arista was able to convince Atlantic that if they gave permission to release it as a single, it could help Matchbox 20's second album titled Mad Season, which was due out the following year. Just before the single was issued, Santana would play a warm-up gig in New Jersey in May of 1999. Evan Lamberg, who is the VP of Music Publishing at EMI Records, would recall to Rolling Stone, Santana decided to play Smooth, which hadn't even come out. But Rob goes up there and I watch tens of thousands of people who have no idea what the song is go effing crazy. I say to Pete, they're dancing like they've known this song for years. This song is going to be huge. After the show I said to Rob, did you feel that? And he says something's going on. But Arista still had an uphill battle to get radio, especially pop stations, to play music by Santana, who hadn't had a hit in years. The label would end up concocting a brilliant plan. They would send out singles of the CD in a white case with the song named Smooth, with the words Mystery Artist written next to it. While a few program directors instantly recognized Carlos Santana's guitar playing on the track, the process to get the song on Top 40 radio was a slow one. With Richard Palmy's then VP of promotion at Arista telling Rolling Stone, the reception was much stronger initially at adult contemporary formats. They targeted an older demo. The early airplay on the adult side came from Minneapolis and San Francisco, and then a good number of small market AC stations followed their lead. On Top 40 pop side, it was Kiss in Boston that was the first Top 40 station to jump on the record. Then Top 40 stations in secondary markets started to play it. Also helping the single was that earlier in the year, Ricky Martin had a huge hit with Livin' La Vida Loca, which proved that pop radio would play Latin-flavored tunes. Rob Thomas, for his part, wasn't initially aware that the song was issued as a single, and it wasn't until he was walking one day in New York City telling Esquire magazine, "I was just walking down West Broadway and I stopped at a crosswalk, and this car full of hot girls, a convertible, pulled up at the red light and they were blaring Smooth." It took me a second to realize what I was listening to, so my first thought was, when I see a bunch of hot girls in a car listening to it, there's something happening here. The song, which was issued as a single on June 29th, 1999, was certified gold by September 13th and platinum by November 9th of the same year. And the song would spend a whopping 12 weeks at the top of the Billboard Hot 100 charts in the summer of 1999. Santana's comeback album Supernatural would go on to sell more than 15 million copies. The video, which features Thomas appearing alongside his wife Marisol and the band Santana, would only further help album sales. The following year, Santana would clean up at the Grammys, winning upwards of 8 awards, including for Best Album of the Year, Best Pop Performance by a Duo or Group with Vocals, and the song continues to live on to this day on radio and in memes. It's even appeared in video games and is a staple at weddings as well. But the success of Smooth left Thomas's bandmates in Matchbox 20 with mixed emotions. While they gave their blessing for him to do the track, drummer Paul Doucette would tell Spin magazine, "It was weird watching the Grammys that the four of us weren't up there too. Our careers started together and he's having a pinnacle of a career moment and he's totally doing it without us. I was really torn, but God, I was really effing proud of my friend." Initially, the success of Smooth also created a rift between Thomas and songwriter Atul Shur, who was unhappy that Smooth was being labeled by the press as being Thomas's song. Thomas would tell Spin magazine in 2000, "He was belittling anything that I put into the song. He wanted to do a dance track with drum machines. Carlos would have never gone for that. I was giving him a lot more credit than he was giving me." The success of the song soon resulted in Thomas becoming the go-to guy for artists looking to work with outside writers, with him soon fielding calls from Mick Jagger, Willie Nelson, and Mark Anthony. Thomas would look back at the legacy of the song, telling Rolling Stone, "Any fun you want to make of that song? I've made fun of it too. I've literally been in Singapore with the guys from Matchbox, drunk, singing at a karaoke. The amount of times somebody's looked at me and said, 'Man, it's a hot one, huh?' To this day, you gotta have a big sense of humor about these kinds of things. It was like the gift that kept on giving." Smooth would prove to be the second instance of an artist who made their debut in the 60s, having their biggest hit of their career nearly 30 years later in 1999. It was prior to Smooth becoming a hit that earlier in the year, Cher would have the biggest hit of her career with the song Believe. But perhaps my favorite quote about the song Smooth came from Thomas, who told Rolling Stone that he would find fans in unexpected places, revealing, "When Jason Newsted was still in Metallica, he came out of an elevator in LA and came up to me and said, 'Hey Rob, I really love that Carlos song. When it gets to Metallica, you know something's going on.'" That does it for today's video, guys. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like button and subscribe, and we'll see you again in Rock and Roll Your Stories. Take care.